Good afternoon and welcome to today's presentation, Plants, Panels and Passion, with Sian Tyrrell and Polina Plotnikova. My name is Melanie Chalk and I am coordinator of the RPS Digital Imaging Southeast Centre, who together with the RHS are bringing you this webinar this afternoon. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to you all, both RPS and RHS members and guests. Some 260 of you at the moment. Especially for those who haven't attended a webinar before, for today's event, we've turned on closed captioning for the benefit of people who need it. You can switch it on or off using the live transcript icon at the bottom of your screen. Unless you're using a tablet, in that case, if you want to turn the closed captions on or off, send us a message using the Q&A icon and we'll send you instructions. So let me tell you the plan for this webinar. The Zoom event has a special question and answer feature. At the bottom of your screen, or again, possibly if you're on a tablet, it's at the top, and you'll see the Q&A icon. You can click this and ask a question at any time. But Sian and Polina will answer these questions after their presentation. And again, with time restraints, we may not be able to answer them all. I know you'll want to thank them, but there will be an opportunity for your feedback after the event. So please, questions specifically about the talk only. Thank you. So let me tell you a little bit about our speakers. Sian Tyrrell, LMPA, runs the portfolio competition for the RHS. Her job is to manage the entries, the judging and the exhibition. But she also has responsibilities in the RHS science and collections area. Photography is important to Sian, but she does not photograph plants. But she might well tell us what she is interested in taking. Polina Plotnikova, FRPS, well known to many of us, is highly qualified to tell us of her experiences of both being a portfolio entrant and for the last 3 years, a judge on the judging panel. So Polina will help us as she recollects what it's like to be a nervous entrant, but she'll also talk from the judge's perspective. So I'd like to now hand over to Sian and Polina.
Thank you very much, Melanie. That was a very lovely introduction. No pressure now to, deliver entertaining and useful talk. So I think Sian is the best person to start with, and we'll, as usual, because she is extremely organized. And after all, RHS is why we are going to talk about portfolio competition today at all. So before we start sharing, I start sharing screen and showing you some of the images which we're both going to be commenting on. We are just going to talk about, for a couple of minutes, about our personal involvement in the competition. So Sian, why don't you start?
Thanks very much, Polina. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm Sian Tyrrell. I work for the RHS, the Royal Horticultural Society. As Melanie kindly said, I am responsible for the portfolio photography competition. I've had that role for 3 years now, and I manage all the entries and all the judging. And I also manage all the photographer liaisons. So if you have any questions or anything about entering for portfolio photography, it's likely to be me at the end of the email address answering your questions and lending a hand. My aim in the role really is to get as many people as possible to consider entering for portfolio and to get a broader range of the types of images and garden and plant photography that we're seeing in the exhibition, which I also organise and run. So yeah, that's me. Polina?
Okay, excellent. So my personal involvement in this particular event started, I think about 12 years ago now, when I submitted my portfolio to RHS annual photography competition portfolio category for the first time ever. And since then, I've been doing it pretty much every single year. And at some point, somebody joked that you ran out of medals for me, Sian. I believe it was someone from the judges panel. And I got invited to join the panel, which was absolutely new level of, well, excitement for me. And well, that's how we ended up on the same team now again. So I'm going to start sharing my screen, and we are going to talk about certain aspects of both technical, a little bit of historical aspect of the competition, and sort of broader meaning of RHS portfolio category as such. So just bear with me, guys, because it's the first time we're doing that as a joint event. It's a bit daunting, I must say. Hopefully it goes as smooth as possible. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Right, so Sian, I believe you are going to start talking about, well, where to start if you are going to enter this particular portfolio category.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get the technical bits out of the way first. So everything that we talk about today and all of the information you're going to need to enter can be found over on the RHS website. You can see the web address there, but if you just Google for the RHS photo competition, you'll find all the information you need on how to enter. The photo competition is bigger than just portfolio photography, which is what we'll be talking about today. There are lots and lots of single image categories that you can enter your work into. It's all totally free to enter. So there is really nothing to lose by entering either for portfolio or for one of the other categories. There are plenty of examples over on the website. So you can see here that you can see, this is the winner from last year. But you can also access the galleries and you can see winners from previous years as well. So there's lots of help over on the website. So if you have any questions, try the website and my contact information is there and you can always get in touch with me and I can answer your questions. So the RHS has been interested in photography for a really long time, right? For this talk, I actually checked how long we've been interested in photography. These images are from 1914. They are part of the collection of images that were the first time that the RHS gave awards for garden and plant photography. These are taken from a collection of lantern slides they were called Messrs. Maltby and Sons, which just makes me chuckle so much. I just think they sound absolutely wonderful. They really do conjure up an image of the early photographers and the early gardeners in that period. So it just goes to show that although the RHS has a really strong history in botanical art, photography is very, very much at the forefront as well. And as you can see here, there's actually quite a wide range of photography coming in panel format for portfolio photography. So it really is wide ranging. This one is more of a scientific type of panel, but we likewise also get landscapes. Here's an example of something with a very specific focus on a particular environment. And really, portfolio photography is an opportunity to showcase all kinds of plant and garden photography. It's not just about the kinds of photography that looks like botanical art, which is what a lot of people think. And here's a picture. I love this picture. I'm so proud of this one. Here's a picture of our exhibition at Saatchi Gallery back in September, the shortlisted entrants for portfolio, all their work up on the walls in the amazing Saatchi Gallery. So it really is, you can see even just from that shot, the big range of different types of photography that we receive and that we award medals for. So in terms of the process of what happens with portfolio entries, this is an example of a panel as it came through to me first time round. So all you have to do is send me a minimum of 6 images on a common theme. And you can see here, this is a really interesting example of, this is how it came through when we first saw it. The photographers send through a layout plan like this to show us what order they would hang their work in, and then they send us their individual images as well. And at that stage, we looked through last year around about 100 portfolios reviewed by the judges. And we select those that we think have the potential to get up to what we call a bronze medal standard. And we may well, even at this point, provide some feedback to photographers. And in this case, that feedback was that a couple of the images were not square when the rest of them were. And so the photographer was then given that feedback to say, look, we actually think you would have a better shot of a medal. We really liked your portfolio, but we think it would be a higher medal if you just had that little bit of extra consistency. So this is the panel, what it looked like when it came back, following the advice from the judges. And then this panel was awarded a silver gilt medal. I'll explain about medals in a bit. And this is it on the wall in the gallery. So the whole process is designed to be really supportive. Feedback is available to everybody that enters. So whether you get selected or not, you will still be able to get feedback from the judges on your work. And if you are selected, you could be lucky enough to walk away with one of our medals. The RHS medals are the exact same medals that are awarded to gardens at events like Chelsea Flower Show. So you can win gold, silver gilt, silver or bronze medals, and they are awarded. They have exactly the same amount of kudos as getting a medal for a garden at Chelsea or Hampton Court Flower Shows. And you might even be lucky enough, as Polina was, to walk away with our best portfolio photography exhibit prize, which is selected each year. One portfolio wins that prize. So we've been doing portfolio now for a long time, but since 2018, we've been doing it as part of the photographic competition. But last year, we really moved the competition forward and started a whole new chapter in its life with our first collaboration with Saatchi Gallery in London. So this was a really exciting event back in September that we are hoping to carry out again this year in April. And this was a great exhibition of both photography and botanical art from the competitions, exhibited with a lovely, oh, this is a picture of the awards ceremony. It was very exciting. It was a lovely ceremony with an opening event. We had press on site. We had lots of speeches. That's Alistair Griffiths, the Director of Science and Collections at the RHS, talking about how important photography is to the Science and Collections Department, and also congratulating all of our winners. So this is a beautiful space, and we were so excited that Saatchi felt as excited as we were. There's Paul, the curator from Saatchi Gallery. They were excited to be able to exhibit such a broad range of photographic styles, and that was really what attracted them to the exhibition and allowed us to have it in this amazing gallery, a dedicated gallery just for the photography side of things. There were also 2 galleries for botanical art. But really just to show you the excitement, Paul looks excited in that picture, and the broad range of pictures that are on the walls there. Polina, do you want to say anything about the event, because you were there?
I think out of all the grand openings of the RHS portfolio category, that definitely was, you know, on the top of my list. It's amazing location. The venue itself is, you know, it has absolutely great light. You've seen some pictures from the exhibition. And yes, I thought it was absolutely amazing gathering of, you know, like-minded people, but also people who really went through certain process, well, vigorous process of selecting images, choosing your panel, producing prints. And that, I believe, leads me to the next part, which we were going to talk about, which is, I think, my part, Sian, if I'm not mistaken.
No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I am going to talk about my personal experience, which I hope will help you maybe to, you know, to go through your own panels and decide what you want to exhibit. So to start with, I want to show you three of my personal portfolios, and those who attended ever attended some of my photography club talks would know most of these images, but I still think it's quite important to start, well, at the beginning. So the thing is, choosing the theme for your portfolio obviously is quite important. Sometimes it could be, you know, single image which would trigger your imagination, the whole idea, but then, oops, sorry, you start to working towards the whole theme. So this one, for example, I'm going through single images first, and then I'll show you portfolio, the whole portfolio, the whole panel. It's quite similar in a way, and most of you should really be familiar with the process when you are, let's say, putting together portfolio in order to gain your distinction within RPS. There are some differences, there are some, well, tricks, and we certainly can give you some tips, because first of all, yes, the theme is extremely important, but quite often I do come across that opinion that people say that, well, yeah, but you know what, I'm not a botanist. I'm just, I'm absolutely in love with flowers. I'm taking beautiful pictures. Botanical aspect is obviously extremely important when you're putting together portfolio, but keep in mind the theme itself could be strong enough if it doesn't necessarily have very strong botanical value. Well, it does need to have botanical value, but it doesn't need to be defining factor. For example, this portfolio we are going through now, my white on white project, as you probably can see, the only thing which kind of unites these flowers, it's the color, it's overall style. You are perfectly fine using that as your, let's say, theme. Is it going to be enough from botanical point of view? It might be enough. It really needs to be visually consistent, same as with your RPS panel, for example. So botanical value, as I said, yes, it is important, but it's not necessarily need to be very sort of scientific one, like flowers of certain region or particular species. It would be beneficial if you create something like that. It will go very well with some of the judges. Again, we all have our preferences, but obviously we are trying to bring in, especially into the final exhibition, the portfolios which are really matching the criteria, but equally matching criteria, both for visual consistency, for, well, being beautiful pictures, but also having quite strong botanical value. So, for example, it was one of my absolutely great portfolio of that time. I still believe that. I did not get gold medal. I wasn't surprised that much, to be honest, because I still think that in this particular portfolio, the visually, these images were, I believe they did meet the criteria, but botanical value probably wasn't that strong. As I said, the only uniting theme, uniting sort of factor in this portfolio is the color. These flowers, they were not from particular, from the same season. They were not, let's say, bulbs or flowers of, I don't know, flowering shrubs. So botanical value was not quite there. It was strong enough, but not for the gold medal, I'm afraid. Still, as I said, visually, I do remember that I received quite a lot of really positive comments from the judges. Mind you, obviously, I was not a judge at that time. You cannot put your all images in the competition if you're judging the same competition. But as I said, I was still absolutely over the moon. I think, Sian, I don't know if you would remember, but I think it was my probably 5th or 4th year of participating in this competition. So as I said, this was my panel, just to give you an idea overall. Back in those days, we were actually allowed to exhibit more than those original 6 images. So don't get confused by the fact that we've just said, Sian just said that you need to send 6 images. Back in those days, the rules were slightly different. So that was my panel. As I said, well, I did not get gold medal, but I received silver gilt medal, which is, well, kind of just below the gold, but slightly above gilt, sorry, silver. which was great. But I must say, it took me quite a while to figure out, okay, well, you start wondering, what would it take to get gold? So my next portfolio, and again, just to give you yet another idea visually of what you can do with flowers. Quite a few of you probably know my fascination with dead flowers, dead and, dried out. Dead is a little bit too morbid, I think, term, but flowers, in my mind, they're absolutely beautiful at the age of their life. So I was really trying to, figure out how flowers, how plants can really be absolutely amazing graphical models, beautiful, elegant models, not necessarily when they are, at their prime, not necessarily when they are blossoming, not necessarily when they are, full of vibrant colors. It was really a study for me of all the graphical elements. What's left when flower or plant is beyond this point when it's still beautiful, blossoming. It's really easy to get, to get excited about blossoming plants, but I absolutely love photographing flowers at every stage of their life. So visual content in this panel, and mind you, we're talking about yet again about 6 years ago, I believe, when I submitted this portfolio. Visual content, as far as I remember, what judges told me, because by the way, I'm sure Sian is going to talk about it later on, but if you are submitting your portfolio, you do have a chance to ask for feedback from the judges, and it would be your personal feedback. So I do remember that I got lots of compliments about this particular portfolio. I think still botanical value maybe was not quite as strong, but on a balance, and I remember that very well, on a balance, it was such a strong portfolio in judges' mind that I finally got my gold medal. So it's just to show you that, yet again, it's not necessarily very scientific research into particular subspecies or extremely rare plants. It's not necessarily. It would be extremely, good if you produce portfolio on that subject. And trust me, most of the judges from the panel would be absolutely excited to see that kind of portfolio submitted. But at this stage, oops, sorry about that. At this stage, that was my portfolio. That was the panel. Back in those days, you can see, yes, I could actually exhibit more than just 6 images. I was absolutely over the moon. That was my gold medal, I believe. Yes, it was. And it was first time ever. It was back in 2014, as you can see. The unusual side effect for me was that you cannot imagine how many jokes this gold medal generated amongst my friends, because they were constantly questioning how on earth submitting portfolio on dead plants to the Royal Horticultural Society, you managed to get your gold medal. Well, I've just talked about it. The balance of visual value, as it were, and botanical value not necessarily is 50-50 according to our requirement. So the last portfolio I'm going to show you again as my personal achievement within our RHS portfolio category was this portfolio, which is yet again one of my absolutely favorite ones, dancing flowers. And it's one of those techniques which I do teach. It's one of those techniques which I personally think extremely exciting. I think yet again it was the case when, as far as I remember, the comments which I received, it was all about, well, the fact that portfolio was quite strong visually. There was definitely visual consistency, but I'm going through images now, and I think some of you might have noticed they're not the same color. So visually, when I went through all these images, I did realize that actually, you know what, as much as I absolutely love some of single shots, I probably better off not putting them into the panel. I'm sure yet again, lots of you heard this particular advice, did have this advice when you were maybe having one of your advisory day for putting together RPS panel. It's very similar to what we are expecting in RHS portfolio category. If you have one of extremely strong image, if you put it into the panel, as much as you love this shot, it will sometimes really stand out so much that the rest of the panel will be not quite there. You really don't want that. So that was my panel of dancing flowers when I submitted the panel to RHS category, portfolio category, and I believe it was my last time exhibiting, because that was when I got my ultimate award, not just the gold medal, which was still absolutely great. And don't believe anyone if anyone tells you, oh, well, second gold medal is not such a big deal. It is big deal. And your third one would be even bigger deal. So you're not getting used to it, trust me. But it was the year when, for the first time ever, I received my Best in Show as well. So Best in Show in portfolio category was absolutely amazing thing. Right, well, I'm going to do just, well, really quickly to show you some of the images from the year when I was judging for the first time, because after exhibiting this Dancing Flowers portfolio, I was invited to join the judges, which was absolutely great. Sian, I believe, I can't remember what year it was, but I think that was
2019, this one.
Yes, so I think it was the last year when portfolio category, along with botanical illustrations, they were exhibited, the finalists, they were exhibited at the RHS halls in central London, near Victoria. So it was still absolutely grand event. I mean, you can see that the space was absolutely amazing. Lots of visitors, of course. And for me, as again, first year judge, it was so important to really, oh, sorry, that's not the image which I thought would be next, but it just to illustrate that, you know, the details we usually go through when we are discussing portfolios on the walls. It's all about, you know, judging both botanical value, your presentation, obviously visual content. It's not like we just simply, you know, quickly going through the exhibition and thinking, oh yes, so those images, I've seen them on the screen. Yeah, they look nice. It's yet another very meticulous process when we are really looking into the actual prints. So first round, which is judged digitally, yes, if you went through finalists, it's absolutely great. It doesn't mean that your images are not going to be scrutinized for the second time when we're looking at them on the wall, when they are printed. So as you can see, it's sometimes quite intense. Sian sometimes just need to sit down to write all the notes and, you know, keep us at check, because there are some judges who probably would happily spend about an hour talking about just one single image. So yes, we do need to be reminded that, you know, we do have some time limits. Some of these portfolios I'm just going to go through quickly. Yes, yet again, they are demonstrating the variety, and you can see that at the bottom of each portfolio, you have both photographer's name, title of particular portfolio, and which medal was awarded. Unfortunately, obviously, we don't have time to go through every single one and explain why, let's say, why particularly this portfolio got only bronze. And yet again, once we're on a subject, I'm sorry, guys, there is no such a thing, oh, it's only bronze. Having, you know, being awarded bronze medal at the RHS annual photography competition in portfolio, it's quite a big deal. So please don't think that bronze is kind of, you know, not big deal. It is. So you can see that the variety of themes, they do really range from images focusing on gardens, images focusing on particular species, on almost like portraits of plants. There are images taken in the studio, there are images taken outdoors. So all I'm really trying to emphasize that your theme, your chosen portfolio subject doesn't necessarily need to be well, sort of narrowly specified in a very narrow theme or subject. It could be quite broad. And we don't have any preferences as judges. We do love, and we will talk about it at the end, we do love to see certain images, we would love to see more of certain images simply because recently, unfortunately, we didn't have many submissions on, let's say, amazing gardens. Lots of participants were focusing on, for example, botanical species or studio work. Sian will talk about it a bit more later on. But some of these images, you can see they are almost probably bordering on being classical botanical illustration rather than photography. And yet again, there is nothing wrong with that because visual style is perfectly acceptable. We will go through all the details. We will go, and on the panel, there are botanists who would always give us a hand with identifying particular plants. So you really need to be careful about that as well. In terms of technique, yet again, it could be pretty much anything, as long as the final result visually is amazing, as long as, let's say, botanical value is enough for us to consider your portfolio. You could use digitally captured images. You could use mirrorless, you could use DSLR, you can use scanned negatives. You can use traditional plates, glass plates. So again, technique-wise, or the method which you used to produce your images is pretty much irrelevant. We are looking at the results. And I've already mentioned that, yes, it could even be a camera-less portfolio. So I don't know. No, sorry, the next one is not on that, but I'll talk about camera-less portfolio later on as well. What I would usually suggest if, well, anyone is asking me, so how do I go about choosing my final images? Yet again, very similar how it's done for RPS. Because you still need to provide your preferable layout. Sian mentioned that. So it might be changed when the exhibiting prints are in the gallery. But really, your visual reference layout, it does play quite a lot at the stage when your portfolio is judged. So similar to the panel, as always. I think that's the last portfolio I really wanted you to have a look in order to demonstrate you the variety and variety of portfolios from the first year when I was judging. I believe, yes, that was our gold medal winner, one of the gold medal winners, and it also was best in show. Again, unfortunately, we don't have time to talk about each particular portfolio in details, but I thought this one was absolutely unique. I believe there is still information on individual portfolios going back at least 2 years ago on the RHS website. So you can always, go back and have a look. That was the award ceremony, and you can see that the actual best portfolio category trophy being given to the winner. So I hope I demonstrated enough the variety, and hope that those who were a little bit, concerned whether your portfolio will meet our criteria, you are slightly more at ease that themes could be pretty much anything. Right, still, going back to criteria and what is important. Sian, I think you are the one going to talk about the judging criteria, which we all follow, and you are keeping us in check.
Yeah, that's right. So essentially, there are three main categories of criteria against which we judge all portfolio photography. And the first one is horticultural content. And Polina already talked a little bit about how, we're not expecting there to be, in every portfolio, there to be a botanical kind of strength, but it really does help. And this portfolio from last year is a really, really good example of how the photographer has created a really strong story around these plants. So these are all poisonous plants. They were all photographed in the wild, outdoors, and the photographer was telling me about the miles and miles she trudged in order to actually find these plants growing in the wild, because some of them are actually fairly unusual these days. So henbane, for example, is not a very common plant. The way that it's been photographed is also really key to the fact that it did get a silver gilt medal. And obviously it has a very high visual impact. The techniques that have been used are absolutely superbly highlighting the slightly dangerous side of these plants. But it is a really great example of creating that botanical story. So the key question I always ask myself when I'm looking at a portfolio is, why am I seeing these plants together? What is it about these plants that means they deserve to sit together in your portfolio? So this is a good example of that. They are all also correctly botanically named, so they have their Latin names on them. That is a requirement of if you get through to the exhibition. We ask that if you are able to, and it's not a big scene with lots of plants in it, that you're able to give them the Latin names, but we also will provide you help with that. So you can write into us and say you don't know what they are, or can you have some help? And we'll get our botanists to have a look at things and give some support, because we know that not everybody is going to have access to that kind of information. But the really key thing with the botanical element is the story. The second point that we look at is photographic quality. And I've used this one as an example because you can see here that from a botanical perspective, this is just one plant. It's just one plant in one location. So from a botanical perspective, it's not quite as strong in terms of its story as the one that we looked at before. However, this also got a silver gilt medal. And the primary reason that this one was so successful is because of the photographic quality. And I have to say, the screen really does not do them justice. On the wall, the quality of the print here was absolutely astonishing. So they are shadows, natural shadows formed by the sun in sand, which is itself quite white. So the first point is there are, very, very good control in the highlights on these images. We are not seeing blown out highlights. There is still a lot of detail left in what would have been an extremely glary environment. So the photographers really demonstrated excellent mastery of the technique. And the quality of these is superb. The sharpness is all right where it should be. We're getting clarity. We're also getting sufficient variety in the shots, balanced by a visual consistency. And that is a really difficult thing to put your finger on. It's one of those awful things that the judges know it when they see it, when that balance is there. But it's about the fact that, really any one of these images is beautiful, but the fact that there are 6 of them together, balanced across the portfolio, giving us that holistic view of the different situations in which the photographer found this plant, is really why it was so successful. It is astonishingly beautiful in print form. The choice of paper and the way it was printed was really superb, and that's why it did so well. The third and final criteria is what we call overall impression. And I've selected this portfolio as an example of that. Some of you might be familiar with this because I know that the photographer is an RPS member and she may well be here today with us. So this portfolio is a cracking example of, we actually saw this portfolio prior to this year. It was entered in a previous year. And the judges really loved the overall look of it. But they had some feedback, and that feedback, if I remember correctly, was that they weren't quite sure why we were seeing the group of plants together that we were seeing, because there was quite a wide variety of plants, all shown with this good visual consistency, with a style that all worked together. But the judges were just a bit confused about the botanical story. So the photographer went away, took on the judges' comments, and came back with this final portfolio, which is all about edible plants. And this is really an example of how to do incredibly well with overall impression, because the impact of this on the wall was absolutely spectacular. And it's got a lot of different elements. It's quite complex, and yet the compositions in putting these different elements together were really, really well done. It was very thoughtfully produced. People really loved it. They loved how it looked, and they loved all the different elements and the textures that were shown, and the little bits of text which were, sort of hidden but sort of readable, and it was all very appealing to the eye. And that's what we think about when we think about overall impression. So yeah, here we go. You can see the whole panel there together in the portfolio format. And so really those three elements coming together, you've got your botanical story, you've got your technical capability really shining through, and you've got that overall impression. And if I was to give kind of advice on what the most important things to think about are when you're putting your portfolio together, I would really say it's think about that wow factor. You're not just looking at one image. Do every single one of these images contributes to the overall impression, and the sum of the parts is greater than the individual pieces. So you have to have a situation where no one image really sticks out either as weakest or as strongest, because if you've got one very strong image, then the question always is, well, you've got that one really strong image, why are the rest of them not as strong as that one? So you don't want that. You likewise don't want one that's really weak, because that just looks like the portfolio hasn't quite been finished yet. And sometimes it takes that extra bit of time to actually think through, okay, and get to the point where you're going to get that silver medal in this case. Give it some time, work on it at just that little bit more, and get it to that point where it's really got that really strong overall impression.
Right. The next bit is going to be me talking about last year 3 gold medal winners. But while this particular portfolio is on your screen, I just want to add that I've already mentioned there are some differences between, criteria for RHS portfolio competition category portfolio, but also and between your panel distinction panel for RPS. I do believe that Julie actually gained her photography distinction with RPS, and her panel did include originally those images which she did submit into RHS portfolio in the first year. So you see, for RPS, quite rightly, it was not necessarily deal breaker that, oh, well, in one panel, there are images together that work absolutely great together visually, but they didn't work together from botanical point of view. RPS did need to, take that into consideration. Again, that would be specifically RHS criteria. So, and again, yes, I think, Sian, we absolutely loved this panel. So we were quite pleased that Julie actually came back to the competition following year with, taking on board judges' advice. So I'm going to talk about images from 3 last year gold medal winners. I'm really sorry, guys, but unfortunately I failed to show you the actual panel, how they looked on the wall. You can really go to, because these are from last year, you can actually have a look at these portfolios on the RHS website. You can see how together, how panel hang together, the whole images. So it was absolutely actually amazing portfolio. It was the title was "I'll Follow the Sun." The author Shelley Rowan's Keycourt was, I believe, unfortunately, couldn't actually come to the. Correct me, Sian, if I'm wrong, but couldn't come to the final exhibition at Saatchi.
Unfortunately, because of COVID, she couldn't travel from the US, and these were all plants from the local area where she lives. So it was quite personal to her.
I think this particular portfolio generated more questions on the day when we had our grand opening, in terms of why this particular panel deserved a gold medal. And don't think for a second that people were, saying it in a negative way. They were genuinely curious. They really wanted to figure out what is so strong about this portfolio that botanically minded judges specifically found it interesting. Well, again, I think for all of us, it was one of those extremely rare examples when botanical value and visual value were pretty much split 50-50. We already talked about briefly that in any given portfolio, sometimes botanical value could be, let's say, 30%, in the panel, and the rest, 70%, would be stunning from creative, artistic, photography point of view. It could be sometimes other way around. We did have one portfolio last year, I believe, where lots of people actually did question why it's in the final at all. Yes, it was pleasantly looking enough portfolio, but to non-botanically minded person, images looked, well, rather same. It was the most beautiful and thoroughly researched portfolio on particular species. So botanical value, I would say, was, well, definitely at least, I don't know, 80%, 85%. The rest was visually, competently done, but probably not as strong. This one, portfolio we're looking at now, both botanically minded judges and, let's say, more photography minded judges on the panel, we were absolutely, we were still, sort of not fighting, but we were discussing maybe one particular image is stronger than another. But at the end of the day, it was a clear winner for us all, because, as I said, botanical value via visually creative value of the portfolio, photography value, it was 50-50, which made it one of our gold medal winners. The next one was probably my personal favorite, because first of all, I absolutely love quirky and unusual techniques. And this portfolio was created without camera. It's camera-less body of work. So Francesca Wilkinson created a portfolio called Full Circle, and you can see it's a portfolio on cyclamen plants. So they were all scanned images. So I know there are quite a few debates going on about the fact that whether camera-less body of work could be even called photography. We're not going to go into that discussion now, but visually this portfolio was yet again absolutely stunning. Also, it was very well researched from botanical point of view. As far as I remember, our botanical experts on the panel didn't find any mistakes or didn't find any problems with identifying particular species, which was very important. So yet again, you could have said, and I think some of us did say that in terms of choosing the species, it was interesting choice, but you could have called it maybe a little bit, well, repetitive, not visually, but specifically, choosing the subject. They are cyclamens, all of them are cyclamen plants, but still this balance, which I've already mentioned, it was there. So for me, it was yet another portfolio, probably very close to 50-50, maybe 60-40 balance, where visual value for me was absolutely stunning. And botanical value was also pretty much there with all correct botanical names. And interesting, as I said, interesting, well, technique as well. As I said, it was camera-less. They were created with scanning images. I do believe that in the past, Francesca also submitted another portfolio, and there were some comments which she took on board. So this one also was a good example of photographer, trying well, not the luck, I don't even want to say that, but submitting portfolio and taking on board whatever judges gave as feedback. The third portfolio, which I was going to talk about, which was also a gold medal winner for last year competition, was this one. I'm still absolutely in awe of, the delicacy, the graphical element of these pictures. Again, Sian, I can't remember if you can help me here. I can't remember it was a story behind the whole portfolio. What this? It was a dedication, as far as I remember. Oh, I think you are muted. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's it. That's it. No, fine. Okay. Sorry, I'm confusing you.
The text below is from letters which were written from the photographer's mother to the photographer's father many years ago, and she created images to go along with these snippets of text, and they all relate to the garden. They all talk about the mother's work in the garden and her experience of being in the garden in the absence of her husband. It's a beautiful story. But the important thing is that it's not just a beautiful story, but that the images really add to the story and that the text really adds to the images. And I've seen many portfolios with both text and images, and often it feels a little bit forced. This one didn't. It felt absolutely natural and right that these things went together.
Also, you might notice that I think it's the first portfolio which we really focused on, which was not in color. Another question which we do come across quite often, because obviously knowing that, okay, well, it's Royal Horticultural Society, surely they want to see the vibrancy, or rather whatever camera sees, that kind of picture. So whatever your eye actually saw when you were looking at the plant, which would be color. And yet again, that's another example showing you that that's not a requirement. One of the criteria is that one portfolio, or the portfolio which you submitted, single portfolio, should not have mixture of black and white or monochrome and color images. But the whole portfolio could be it is absolutely fine to submit monochrome portfolio. And I think again, you might argue that, and you would be quite right. You would be quite right in this opinion that botanical value was probably less strong, not as strong as on some other portfolios. But talking about balance, the images were absolutely beautiful. They were conveying so much, atmosphere. They were conveying thoughts. They were telling the story. And on a balance, we were, I think, absolutely unanimous when we decided, yeah, that was definitely gold medal. So moving on, I think, Sian, you would love to talk about now, and I'd love to hear that as well, because this is something which photographers asking us quite a lot. So what you are looking at these days, what would be a good theme to pick up for your submission?
Thanks, Polina. Yeah, so one of the things that we've noticed over the past few years is that actually we're getting, some years we get a lot of one type of photography and other years we get a lot of another type of photography. And we believe that this is being driven by a number of factors. Firstly, that there are a lot of workshops that people can go on, like the ones that Polina runs, and lots of people run both online and in-person workshops around plant and garden photography. So we will often see a spate of entries on a similar style, using a similar technique. And one of the things we always look for is things to be unique. We want to see something we've never seen before. And unfortunately, bizarrely, one of the things we don't get a lot of is photos of gardens.
I would not believe, sorry, I would not have believed if I was told that actually the most lacking theme in Royal Horticultural Photography competition would be gardens.
Yeah, exactly. We get plenty of landscapes, which is lovely. And we count natural landscapes as being very much within the scope of portfolio and the RHS. But we get a lot less photos of gardens. And I think this is partly because photos of gardens are quite hard to do well. Often, you see a beautiful garden and what your eye sees is something amazing, but when you try to photograph it, you don't seem to quite be able to capture it. And things like the time of day, being extremely careful with composition to avoid clutter, and also really understanding what's the importance of that garden and what are the way that garden has been planted, what's the story here. is really more difficult than a lot of people think it is. So I'm sharing here some images from one of our judges, Clive Borsnell, who is a garden photographer and who constantly laments to us throughout the judging process about the lack of garden photographs that we get. And we want to see photographs of lots of different gardens, everything from the RHS gardens through to your back garden. We want to see the story of that. And we really are looking to get more garden type entries. And you can see it's not just planting, it's the interaction of gardens and planting with buildings. It's about atmosphere. It's about telling us, what's going on in this garden. It could be about the time of year, it could be about the time of day, or it could be about the story of the location itself. And the key to a really good garden photo is that understanding of the planting, understanding of, why is that important to this location or to this homeowner, or to the organization that runs or owns that garden. So I think if you're thinking, of looking through your archives and you're thinking about potentially what you might be able to enter for RHS portfolio, if you are a garden visitor, if you have your own garden, I would really consider, picking out the very best of what you've got in terms of garden landscapes that are going to show us the amazing plants and the way that you interact with them, the way that people interact with them is really, we'd love to see more of that. We just don't, it's very strange given that we are a gardening organization that we don't get very many pictures of gardens at the moment.
Can I just also add, before Sian moves to the next theme, which is lacking, unfortunately, in submissions, can I just also add that even within garden theme, there are so many sort of sub-sections or sub-themes you can focus on. Yes, your own garden, location-wise, seasonal. We don't get that many seasonal gardens, and there are so many ideas, visual ideas, which could be, used for that kind of portfolio. So also historical gardens and how particular gardens have been, let's say, changing through the years. So think about it. It's not just one particular visit to the garden, and there could be quite a few other themes within one garden. So the last, I think, point we were going to talk about, Sian, that's lack of people in the garden.
Yeah, so I've, Melanie mentioned I am a photographer. I'm not a garden photographer. I'm a portrait photographer. So this is probably quite close to my heart, as it may be for many of you as well. I want to see the people in gardens. Gardens don't just happen by themselves. People are involved in the creation of gardens. And the RHS has recently done a lot of research around the mental health and well-being aspects of gardening and being both in gardens, but also in creating gardens and in the act of growing. And these pictures that I'm showing you now are from another one of our judges, Paul Dubois, who is a garden and portrait photographer, and they're photographs of people in the gardens that they've created. And I'd really love to see more of this in the competition. There obviously has to be sufficient plant content for it to be suitable for this competition. But I would also argue that even studio type portraits, if they are of gardeners holding their plants, or if they are of people who are important to the world of gardening, even if it's not on a big scale, if they're important people to your local community garden, I would love to see those, because I do feel that the gardeners are really underrepresented in the pictures that we get. And I'm not just talking about home gardeners. Obviously, we're seeing some allotmenteers here as well, but also, people working in horticulture. If you have access to photograph people that work in commercial nurseries, who are working in agriculture, who are, just involved in working with plants in general, in whatever circumstance, I really feel that there's a place for that in the portfolio competition, and it's not something we see a lot of. And it's one of those things where I think because people inevitably, as photographers, when we consider entering a competition, we like to look at what's won in the past. And we think, well, we can judge from that what the judges are looking for. And that's true to a certain degree. But the problem with that is that since we haven't had any of these, we haven't got any examples of winners with this kind of subject. So people aren't entering them. Because they think that's not what we're interested in. And that isn't true. This particular image I absolutely adore. I just think the whole thing comes together so beautifully with what she's wearing and the place that she is. It really is the kind of thing that I'd love to see a lot more of. So really, I guess it's just don't be afraid to include people and how they work with the garden and how they are in the garden, even, not gardeners, but people visiting gardens. Surprisingly, we don't see that a lot. We don't see a lot of people interacting with plants and gardens. We get some pictures every year of children in gardens, which, to do well is very difficult because they're constantly on the move and can be quite challenging to photograph well. But yeah, gardeners, not so much. We don't see very many of them. So I'd really love for people to consider sending us a few more of those.
Right, I think it's the last image we were going to show you today, guys. And again, trust me, if time was not, restricted, we could be really, talking about so many other aspects. But I hope we've given you certain, the minimum information first to inspire you to take part in the competition, to look back to your archive, or maybe to start a new project. I am going to stop sharing my screen because I believe it's now time for questions, if there are any. I was not monitoring what was going on in the chat room. So hopefully some people got interested and we do have some inquiries.
I'll answer the obvious ones first, Melanie, because I'm sure these are in there. The first thing to say is the deadline for entries for this year's competition, which will be exhibiting in April at Saatchi, is the 1st of February at 10 a.m. UK time. So you've got a couple of weeks if you want to get in for this year's competition. But it will reopen again in the summer for the following year's competition. So basically, there's only a few months of the year when this competition isn't open for entries. So I'm constantly getting entries in and having conversations with people. So there's no bad time to enter. But if you're desperate to get in this year, you've got until the 1st of February at 10 a.m.
Excellent. Well, there are some questions, but if I could say thank you very much for that incredibly informative presentation. I'm sure people have been inspired and may have their theme ready. They might get it done in 2 weeks, but they might make it a project for the year. So for those of you wish to ask a question, there's the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen or at the top if you're on a tablet. So if you wish to place a question in there, that would be great. Just keep your thanks. We know you'll want to thank them. They've done a wonderful job, but save that for when we send around the survey. So questions only. So I'll get on with some of the ones that we've got already. And the first one from Susan Roberts: do you need to be a member of the RHS to enter?
Nope, you absolutely don't. It's free and open to everybody.
Very good. This is for Polina to answer from Marina. I won't go with the surname. I make a pig's ear when I try to do them. So Polina, how do you shoot your flowers? What are they on against?
Oh, that's a bit tricky because we've seen at least 3 different portfolios from me, and all 3 portfolios were based on completely different techniques. So I'm not quite sure how to answer that. But I think I will probably repeat it later on again. But if you have questions about specifically my images, which I did share today, by all means, go on my website, ask me the question in the submission form. So email me, I will be happy to answer any questions specifically about my own images. I don't actually believe in not sharing techniques and information. So I am absolutely happy to do that later on. I don't think we have time for me going on into technical photography, technical details, how I shoot my flowers. But I'll be happy to answer that later on.
Excellent, but there are a couple more, so I'll just read them. So it's one, how did you achieve the dancing flowers, and what technique and camera do you use to photograph your portfolio?
Yet again, dancing flowers portfolio based on multiple exposure in camera plus intentional camera movement. I don't think we can go into more details than that, because as I said, the point of this presentation is obviously not about that.
Yeah. Nora Waygood asks, how many entries does the RHS normally get?
We get about 100 a year. It varies depending. 2020 was a bumper year because I think a lot of people had some time to spend going through their archives. But yeah, we get about 100 to 150 entries a year. Obviously, I would love for that to be more. And as I said earlier, my role is really to expand the reach and to encourage more people to enter. So the more the merrier. I would love to see as many as possible.
Excellent. Judith White asks, some national and international photography competitions publish a book of the winning images each year. Does the RPS do this? Sorry, RHS, I knew I'd get those muddled up. Do this, or might they in the future?
We haven't done in the past, and we won't be doing this year. It is something we've thought about, and particularly with Saatchi, because they have access to the kind of ability to produce things like catalogues, which we've not had in the past. So it has been considered. We do produce a lot of books at the RHS on photography of various types, and also on botanical art. But no, we don't specifically produce one for this. We are a charity, and those books are incredibly expensive to produce and put together. So it's not something that we've done just yet.
Okay. I think this one will be for Polina. When you mention people who have submitted some of these images for their RPS panel, do you mean L, A, or F?
Well, we definitely did have in the past the whole range of RPS members who were, they were successful with their submissions to RHS. And on top of my head, from the top of my head, they were all three distinctions who, as I said, they were taking part in RHS competition. So if the question is whether you are, I don't know, more likely to be successful if you have, let's say, associateship panel, I don't think so. How it works the other way around, I don't know. I am not RPS judge, well, not yet. But within RHS competition, I can definitely tell you that your photography distinction within RPS would give you quite good help in a way. But it's not necessarily something which you can count on to be helpful. It's still your portfolio which will be assessed, not your distinction.
This one comes from Julie Cowdy. Thanks for showing my portfolio again. Is it possible to make more than one portfolio entry? I have several ideas.
Oh, great. Well, I look forward to seeing them. We have in the past allowed photographers to submit more than one portfolio, but Saatchi have a requirement that only one photographer can only exhibit one portfolio, and that caused us some problems last year. So we've said for this year, we're asking photographers to only submit one, because we don't want people to be disappointed that if they submit two and two are up to the standard, they can only exhibit one. So it may be that in the future, again, we can do more than one, but we are asking this year for photographers to submit only one.
Wonderful. Angie Wallace asks, are fungi allowed?
Yes, fungi are allowed. We know they are not plants, but we do include them. It is within our scope, and we also include lichens as well.
And
we never get... Sorry, go on.
Go on. On a personal note, I'd love to see more really good fungi photography in the competitions.
I was going to say, we never get a lot of fungi. We do get a few, and they tend to be of the very scientific type. So they tend to be kind of documentary of fungi in the wild, which is lovely. But if you have creative ideas for fungi, I think that would be a really interesting topic for a portfolio.
Okay, this question from Sue Lambert's all about gardens. So very inspiring. Interesting to know that gardens do not feature very highly in the portfolio competition. Maybe issues with gaining permission. I know a local garden which does not allow their visitors to use photos for this kind of thing, as it has its own pro photographer. National Trust gardens may be a permission problem here too. Gaining access at the best time of day could also be difficult. Any advice for that one?
Yeah, it is something that we've come up against in the past, and we do ask that if you're photographing in a private garden that's not open to the public, that you do ask them for their permission. And that actually is a piece of the advice that I would give, is actually to seek out some of the smaller gardens. Some of them open for things like National Gardening Week, or for the National Gardens Scheme. So they are smaller often, well, though some of them are still very large, but private and less seen gardens. They're more interesting to photograph, and their owners are actually often happy for you to use them for the RHS competition. Many of them will be RHS partner gardens that I don't think would have much of a problem with signing a property release form or whatever it is you need, just something to say that you had permission, because you're not trying to make a huge amount of money out of this. You may well sell some prints as a result, but you could also come to an agreement with the property owner that actually the prints will be used for the exhibition, but they won't be sold, and digitals you won't be selling, that sort of thing. That's my first bit of advice. My second bit of advice is get to an RHS garden. I will automatically give you permission to enter portfolios that feature RHS gardens. They are massive, and there's plenty of areas that we haven't seen photographs of in portfolio for a long time. So yeah, visit an RHS garden and you haven't got a problem. I am aware there is a bit of a challenge with National Trust gardens, but again, it does vary. So do ask, it's always worth asking.
Okay, thank you. And Martin Paulson, he just clarifies that you are allowed to photograph freely in RHS gardens. So that's absolutely really a comment. A data, excellent. What about workshops in RHS centres to advise photographers how to photograph flowers, best plants, positions, lighting, etc.?
Yep, absolutely. If you hop onto the RHS website, you'll find under the What's On section, find the RHS garden that's closest to you and have a look. We do run photography workshops at all the RHS gardens at various times of year. We have some wonderful photographers who teach lots of different types of techniques, both indoor and outdoor photography of plants and gardens. And it's something we're looking to expand, particularly the outdoor ones in times of COVID. But also as we try and encourage more people to get involved with portfolio photography, I'll be having a look at whether we can run some workshops, potentially some kind of preview your portfolio type events as well. But I'm reliant on our wonderful judges, all of whom volunteer their time for free to come and give me a hand for that. So we have to find times of year when they're available as well. But yeah, we do have lots of workshops. Do go on and have a look. There's all on the RHS website.
I'm not quite sure what this means. Kathleen Datana asks, who prints a winning photo?
So it might mean a number of things. I suppose if you're asking who actually prints the photographs that go into the exhibition, the answer is the photographer does. And that's always been the case. So you have the choice of how you print. Saatchi, when we're working with Saatchi, they have some requirements around the space that's available and around the framing. Last year, they did the framing for us, but the photographer had a choice of colours of frame. But it varies year on year, but the actual printing is almost always arranged by the photographer, however you want to organise that. In terms of things like, if you're asking who takes the images afterwards and prints them and publicizes them, so they go into the Garden magazine, which is the RHS magazine that goes to almost 600,000 RHS members around the country. So that's a great way of getting your work seen. And obviously they go onto our website. We also get lots of press interest at Saatchi Gallery. So I was interviewed and showed people round a number of quite high profile publications, Harper's Bazaar, the Daily Mail, and a few others last year who were interested in particular work that was on the wall. And the photographers that take part give us a license to use their images for the promotion of the exhibition and the competition. So sometimes those images will appear alongside pieces about the exhibition in national newspapers and things like that, always credited with the photographer's name.
Excellent. Judith White, she asked, is there a time limit when it comes to entries? Can older images be entered for the first time, not repeat attempts?
Yes, absolutely, they can. We ask that they haven't been exhibited before with the RHS. It's fine if you exhibited them for another competition, as long as that competition's terms and conditions allow you to also enter them in our competition. But no, for portfolio, we don't have a time limit. I believe there are some time limits for some of the categories of the other categories in the photographic competition. So for single images, so you'll need to check the terms and conditions for those. But no, for portfolio, we will take older images. That isn't a problem as far as we're concerned.
Wonderful. Linda Taft, is mobile photography accepted?
It absolutely is, and we are getting an increasing number of them, particularly from younger photographers. We also get portfolios. I've just had one in from someone who's 12 years old. So yes, we are getting a lot more mobile photography. There is no reason why we wouldn't consider a mobile photographed portfolio. The quality of those photographs now is excellent. And provided they can print to the size that we need for the gallery, it's a good quality, then there really isn't an issue.
Do you have to state that on an entry form, what camera you've used?
Yeah, we do ask people to give us some information when they enter. So when you enter, you send just 6 images, your layout plan and a short statement about your work. And that should include information about the techniques that you've used. And that includes any post-processing that's been done as well. You don't need to go into loads and loads of detail about exactly which camera and exactly which lens. I'm happy to have just the kind of machinery you were using and any details about post-processing or techniques that have been applied.
Kathleen Datana asks, if you enter people in the garden, do you need a photo release form?
Yes, you do. So because they will be potentially on exhibition, we would ask that you have a model release. It doesn't have to be a formal kind of form, but the people you are including need to be aware of what's going to happen, because potentially those images could appear in the papers if somebody visited the exhibition for one of the newspapers. So yes, always make sure if it's a recognizable person, I would definitely be asking for a model release.
Okay. Richard Milton Walsall asks, who was the garden photographer that you mentioned?
Clive Borsnell. He is one of our judges and an excellent garden photographer. I also talked about Messrs. Maltby and Son, who were garden photographers in 1914, but you might have more problems contacting them.
Could you just spell that surname, please?
It's Boursnell.
Lovely, thank you.
Look him up, he's got all his stuff online.
So this is Sue Lambert again, talking about the gardens. She wonders if you've got any tips on gaining access to special gardens.
I am always just really upfront with them about it. I always try and contact an individual person. I always try and have a name of a person. So if you look up things like the National Garden Scheme and National Gardening Week, there are lots of gardens that will be open for those events. Try and find the named person, either the head gardener or the property owner, and get in touch with them direct. Be very open about what it is that you're doing. Say that you're a photographer, that you're interested in taking some photographs for potential entry to the RHS competition. I always offer to provide them with copies of the photographs as well and a license for their use, because a lot of these gardens don't have the money to be employing professional photographers to take their photos, so that works for them as well. So I would offer them a trade and say, I'm happy to provide you with the copies, and if you're happy for me to use them for this purpose. And I've never found that people have been very hostile. They sometimes have just said no because they've got their own plans, and that's fine, move on to the next one. But a lot of the time, just being really upfront and honest about what you're doing, and also, blow your own trumpet a bit, tell them how good a photographer you are and show them some examples of your work. And a lot of them will be happy for you to come in and take photographs.
Excellent. Bernie Kelly asks, if you submit a panel for a distinction with the RPS, which is a weighting assessment, can you submit some or all of the images to the portfolio competition at the same time?
I can answer that, and the answer is absolutely yes, because even if you think about it, distinction within RPS has nothing to do with competition. I know that in some competitions there is very, strict rules that you only submitting images which haven't yet won any major awards. So RPS distinction obviously doesn't have that kind of requirement. So if you do have a portfolio which is either waiting or already been assessed by RPS judges or panel of judges, you still have, if you want to, you can absolutely submit it to RHS portfolio competition. Same goes for single images if you want to.
Excellent, thank you, Polina. Janet Downs asks, what degree of post-processing is allowed?
I am very open to all aspects of post-processing and techniques. The one thing I would say is that your technique needs to enhance the portfolio. It needs to enhance the plants or the garden that you're trying to show us. Where we get a lot of images that are very heavy on post-processing, often the thing that's important or striking about them is the post-processing and not the actual subject matter. So I would shy away from very heavy techniques, which are you're just essentially trying to pull together a bunch of random plants with a technique that's applied to all of them in order to create a panel. So try not to think of it that way around. Try and think about putting your plants together first, and then think about what post-processing you can do that will enhance what it is you want to show us about these plants. So what is it that you're trying to communicate to us? Is it about how colorful they are? If so, then it would seem appropriate that, some color changes or some post-processing to enhance color is a probably sensible idea. But if what you're trying to show us is that they are, they are really deadly or something like that, then maybe different kind of post-processing is what you might want to go for. So it's really thinking about what's appropriate and what's beneficial to the plant subject, and not trying to kind of force plants into, I've got this technique and I've got this way of post-processing that I really like, and now I'm going to force plants into it to make it fit. I would really stay away from that. That's where a lot of people are often disappointed that the judges don't really love their work. And it's not that they don't love the work, it's just not right for the competition.
No. Okay, Kirsten Bax says, would botanical flowers, still life, fit in the criteria?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would personally, yet again, I would personally absolutely love to see that kind of images more. We do see them in, I believe, the last competition when finalists were exhibiting their work at the RHS halls. One of the gold medals, it was portfolio pretty much in the style of old masters with very heavy sort of emphasis on flowers themselves, flower arrangements of particular species. So botanical value was still there, but it was very artistic, very creative. And it was still life with flowers. So absolutely yes.
Okay. Michelle Whitmore says, can we submit images from show gardens?
Yes, we will accept images taken at RHS shows. We get very few of them again. We may need to, in the event that those got through to being in the final, we may need to make contact with the show garden designer or the owner and the builder. But that's something we can look at. We have those contacts anyway, because if they were at an RHS show, we know those folks and we can make those arrangements. So I would say absolutely, if you have them and they are good. Again, it's quite difficult at show gardens. If you've ever been to Chelsea and have tried to take a photograph, you'll know how difficult it is to get close enough with all the crowds. And when I go around Chelsea before it opens and I see the professional photographers, they're all up a ladder. So it is difficult to do. If you have them and they're good, I would enter them, and then we will look into making sure that any necessary permissions are sorted out.
Excellent. Angie Wallace says, if one of your images has won another competition elsewhere, can it still be included in a portfolio? I think you covered that sort of, didn't you?
I think if it's won a major competition, then no, I wouldn't include it in a portfolio, because it will stand out like a sore thumb, for want of a better word. requirements of the competition, I believe, are that it hasn't had large scale publicity because of winning another competition. So I would say, something like having it as part of your distinction or qualification panel probably wouldn't count under that. But if you've won something like International Garden Photographer of the Year or something like that with that image, then no, I wouldn't include it because it may well not be accepted.
This is quite similar, and it says, thank you for this. Can you enter RHS and G, the Garden Photographer of the Year, with the same images?
You can, and people do. Yeah, you can enter them. That's not a problem. In the event that we got there first, i.e. if we selected you first, and then International Garden Photographer of the Year wanted to do something with it later, they would have to check their regs and our regs. So it could get a little bit complicated, but yeah, you can enter both. The chances of something winning well in both is actually quite low. We haven't seen it happen because we judge in very different ways. What they're looking for is quite different to what we're looking for. So I would say, yeah, if you want to enter them, go ahead, but just be aware that if it wins something big in one, it may get removed from the other.
Right, excellent. Marianne asks, do all the images have to be the same size?
The sizes they vary depending on where we're exhibiting and the amount of space that we have. What we normally recommend is that they are similar sized, but we have had portfolios where, some of them have been landscape and some of them have been portrait, and that's worked fine. It just depends how you lay them out on the wall. And we've had some where we've had some square and some landscape or portrait as well. The judges may advise you to make them all the same shape if they feel that that would be better, but the sizes will vary. When you send them to me initially, I just ask that you send them to me at fairly low res, at about 1024 pixels on the longest side if you're sending them digitally. You can send them physically as well if you prefer, but at the first round, I would strongly recommend, even if you're using analog techniques, that you send scanned versions for the judges to look at. So it varies depending on what space we've got available and where we are. How many portfolios we get will determine how much space we have, and how big people can go. Last year they were all consistent and they were all 40 by 50 centimeter framed.
Yeah, we're used to that in the RPS. That's a good size. Beth DeBoer asks, can abstract botanicals or florals be submitted?
Absolutely, yes. If you've got single abstracts, there is an abstract category for the competition, so you can enter that. But yes, we'll take portfolios that are abstract as well. And again, they'll be judged along the exact same criteria. So is there sufficient botanical value, photographic quality, and horticultural and overall impression? So yeah, absolutely, abstracts will definitely count.
Excellent. So we have I was going to say last question, there's another one popped up. So we're doing very well on time. So there's just two more that we'll go for. Sally Stone asks, is it acceptable to show an insect or insects on the plant if the insect is in relationship to the plant?
Yes, thank you. You've mentioned something I meant to mention earlier and completely forgot to mention. Yes, we do get a lot of wildlife type photographs as well. Not just insects, we get mammals as well. The really key thing for that is they are absolutely allowed to be there. But the key thing is, what's the story? And this needs to be focused on the plant and not on the insect. So if you're showing me a whole portfolio of images of butterflies on the same plant, that's going to be of much less value as part of this competition than showing me something, for example, which tells me which pollinators pollinate which plants. So you're matching your insect to your plant, or you're talking to me about what the role of the insect is in the life cycle of that plant, or something like that. So it really needs to be, any animal content needs to be balanced with sufficient plant content to keep that botanical interest. But yeah, we do love to see them. We get some wonderful wildlife included in our entries, but as long as your plant content is at the fore and your animal content is helping tell that story, absolutely. Send me both insects and mammals if you can catch them in your entries as well.
Excellent. So this is the last question. Fiona McCowan says, from some of portfolios you showed, I assume you will consider a portfolio of woodland images.
Yes, we will absolutely love that. Again, throughout competition in the couple of last years that when I've been involved, my absolutely favorite portfolios were actually probably on woodland and, you know, life in the forest, seasonal forests. So absolutely, the answer is yes. Send them to us.
And you don't need to worry about having to come up with all the botanical and Latin names for every plant in your landscape photograph. We just ask for a location for those ones. So don't panic. You don't have to name every tree. Could be there a while.
So that's it. I'm going to turn off that. So thank you so much for answering all those questions, which were all very, very helpful and added to the experience for everyone. So thank you, Polina and Sian, for all the preparation you've put into bringing this presentation to us today. So I've put up the RPS, I'm sorry, I'm doing it again, the RHS website address, but you can easily just pop it into the search and it will come up, and that's where you'll find all the information that they've told us about this afternoon. So the RPS Digital Imaging Southeast Centre are so pleased that you've joined us for this event, and thank you very much for coming along, and I hope you have been inspired to perhaps have a go. And you must bombard Sian with all your entries. If this is the first time you've attended one of our events, you may not be aware that we have a programme of online photography talks and workshops which are open to everyone, usually for a nominal fee if you're not a member of the RPS. But if you are a member of the RPS, you'll find that even though the fee for non-members is low, you will probably save money by joining digital imaging as a digital-only member. Our next online talk will be with Paul Gallagher, and he's talking about infrared photography, entitled Working in Another Light. This takes place on Saturday, February the 5th, same time, same place. For our regulars, it's always good Saturday afternoon at 4 p.m. But in the meantime, stay safe, everybody. Thank you very much to Sian and to Polina and to the webinar team. And goodbye to everybody.